Distressed doom. Yeah, that's going to be one of my 7 predictions for the 2024 real estate market. And that one is not pretty. Along with that, I'm going to be talking about what I think the price is going to be, the rates are going to be, what the rental market's going to look like, and some crazy things about open bid on what will probably, maybe, sometimes wrong, maybe right, will happen in the 2024 real estate market. So buckle up. This is my 7 predictions for 2024. Now, if you are looking for some help on how to navigate the 2024 real estate market, you can book a call with me. Use the link that's right here. I do have most of my time slots reduced right now for holiday hours, but there are still some time slots. So make sure if you want to chat with me, use the link right here to book a call before the new year. Chat soon. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prop, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me. And then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zen, and I run and operate a RE/MAX in the greater Toronto area on top of making awesome educational real estate content just like this one. And this is my favorite video to make all year, but I've tweaked it a little bit this year. Previously, I kind of made it jokingly about craziness, about how ridiculous predictions could be, but as long as people are taking it a little bit more too seriously, so I want to show you and present to you what I'm seeing, data I'm seeing, graphs and charts I'm seeing to show you what I'm expecting for 2024. And look, don't take these predictions seriously. Like sometimes I'm right more than half the time, sometimes I'm wrong more than half the times, but this is just what I see because from new input, there's always new outputs. But at the current moment right now, at the end of 2023, as I make this video, this is what I'm seeing and what I think will happen in 2024. So buckle up. Number 1, distressed doom. Yeah, I'm starting this one. I really think the pre-construction space is going to get hit so hard next year because even though rates potentially may be coming down, and again, more on that later, the fact that people are closing on properties they bought during the pandemic right now spells disaster, okay? So here's kind of one right now. So you can see this is on Facebook Marketplace and people are trying to get rid of their property. And I find it semi-hilarious that you actually have to say real distress because some people are putting distress deals out there saying that, hey, look, we're going to sell it at price. We're not going to make money, but no one really wants that. This person here is walking away from $400,000 deposit in a detached home, 6-bedroom in Markham. That's wild, right? Because they probably bought at the start of pandemic, right? And I've always said pre-construction has always been like a 20, 30% premium depending on who you're buying it from. And then they lost that spread because prices came down a little bit. Plus they also paid a premium on it. So now they have to walk away or, they could face bankruptcy. So that's just one of them. And I see a lot more of stuff like this that's probably gonna happen because a lot of the freehold homes that were bought during the pandemic are coming for completion right now that are about 18, 24 months to build, right? So that's, 2 years ago for the pandemic. And then you also have some condos, like big towers that were sold maybe a little bit before but the pandemic and they got built really fast. And I think those are gonna be coming into a lot of problems too, right? So here's another example of it, right? So you got a person who's losing all their deposits right now and they're also paying someone because they need to get out of the deal. And this is what the problem I see. If you can't close or you know that your property isn't worth what you bought, you're in a lot of trouble come closing time, right? This is the problem. Now, obviously, when you look at this, I don't think a lot of people were buying a lot of pre-construction in 2023 anyways. And, the argument would be that, hey, look, we're going to probably see a lot of supply shortage in the new year when this stuff is actually finished. But at the current moment right now, yes, there's not many sales because prices are maybe down a little bit and there's not much interest by investors. You do have to always remember when you are buying pre-construction, you're buying at a premium. So you can see over here, back in the pandemic, this is kind of where people are buying. That premium has always kind of been there, okay? Except for maybe in 2020. So that premium has been there. But as prices flatlined and the resale prices came down, this gap right now that you're seeing, at least in the condo space, is the gap that you have to come up with if you under appraise. So for illustrative purposes, let's say, this is $1,000 a foot where resale is right now. This is $1,300. That gap is $300 a foot for your condo you have to come up with come closing. And that's kind of the challenge that I see right now in 2024. And I made this exact same prediction last year too, where things are going to get worse for the pre-con. And that's why I labeled this one, pre-con will get way worse because this stuff is coming due now, okay? So the next prediction we got is prices I actually think are going to go up 3%. Look, RE/MAX is saying that right over here that they think prices are going to go down. I'm just going to zag. And the reason why I think I'm going to zag is while sales may go up, and I think prices may go up a tiny, tiny bit, it's not going to go on that bull run a lot of people think. The only reason why I think prices are going to go up is because I really do think that there are some buyers that have been on the sideline waiting for the rate cuts to happen. And if and when that does later, they're going to come back onto the market. But that doesn't instantly mean that prices are going to shoot up like crazy. And I've had a lot of calls with a lot of people recently where they're afraid that once the rate cut happens, there's FOMO, the market's going to spur. While there is some aspect to that, you have to weigh the fact that right now, at the end of the year, we have a doubling of inventory, like I said last year, right? So we still have to plow through all that inventory before we see a lot of price appreciation. So this is exactly why I think there may be a minor price increase, but you have to look at what type of asset that is. I think a lot of the bad properties are still going to stick around. They're not going to sell unless the sellers are really, really motivated or desperate. Whereas the good properties turnkey, where you can walk in and move into, I think that stuff is going to move because the people who are end users, not investors, are going to want to come back into the market because they've been sidelined and they're looking for those type of properties, right? Now, if I were to use my crystal ball, again, don't take this too seriously, I think the price increase is going to happen sometime in the spring as usual. And the main reason for that is, I'll talk more of this later, but rates have come down in a sense a tiny little bit. The bond market has moved. But what's going to happen right now is that the banks aren't giving back that movement in the bond market, which is the fixed rate. So the fixed rates are still a little bit elevated, even though they should be a little bit lower relative to what the bond market is. So for anyone who kind of wants that in layman's term, the bank borrows money from, call it the bond market, right? And then they lend it to you and there's a spread. That's how much they make. That spread is really big right now because they haven't reduced what they lend it to you. And most banks generally reduce their spread because it's more competitive in the spring as people are buying properties. So when that rate cut happens, I think that's probably when prices are going to go up. This is what I saw in this little red line here. And we kind of saw that in 2023 as well, right? But that, rate reduction was induced by something else. So that's kind of why I say you really, really have to kind of look at where rates are relative to inventory for prices to go up, right? Because this year rates came down to about 4.8% and then prices went up. Right now we're at 5.5. Maybe if we get into the high fours, that's kind of when I think the end users will come back in and maybe they'll start buying properties again. But again, you really just have to balance the two. And while I'm telling you all this from a macro perspective, every market behaves differently from a micro perspective in a local market because maybe certain pockets have a lot more inventory. And I've talked about this in the past before. Look at condos in downtown, a lot of inventory, right? The third one, rate cuts in 2024. Look, this one is not just me pulling it on my bum, right? I'm actually going to show you what the bond market is predicting. So this chart over here was shown to you before the US Federal Reserve came out and said that, hey, we're going to cut rates in 2024, which was a pivot. So now everything got kind of dovish. People are like, oh, hey, rate cuts are coming, right? So the bond market now is predicting a 91% chance that there is going to be 75 basis points. 75 basis points. So 0.75% rate cut by March 2024. Look, last year I looked at this too, and I was wrong, and they were wrong too. So you have to keep in mind, this stuff is changing all the time. I'm going to show you a little bit. This chart, I snipped it before the US head of the Federal Reserve, which is the equivalent of head of Bank of Canada, right, said that they're going to cut rates in 2024. And at that point right now, they were saying that rates were going to come down 25 basis points, so 0.25% by March of 2024. Now, I fast forward to, hey, this is after the guy came out and said that, hey, we're going to have rate cuts in 2024, and look how much the market moved. By March 2024, they're saying, 9% of 50 basis point rate cut, very low probability. But look, 67% chance of 75 basis point, 0.75 rate cut by summer of 2024, right? So this is what I'm saying. New input means new output. This is why a lot of people follow all of this stuff. But most of the time right now, when you talk to a lot of people, everyone thinks that we've reached the peak of the hiking cycle and we're going to be coming down now. The question is just how fast. And this is why I want to show you another example of how new inputs always change the outputs, right? So this chart here shows you that in the orange line, this is the November projections of where the interest rates were going to, start slowly coming down by the end of the year in 2024. And you can see in December, this was again before the US Federal Reserve made that announcement. Look, it already came down a little bit. So the expectations of a rate cut to 4.75 prime rate, let's look over here right now. So remember, new input means new outputs, and that's why so many people keep following this. Now, when we look at the 5-year Canada bond, again, this may get a little bit nerdy, a little bit technical for you guys, but essentially right now, after the US made that announcement, the bond market, which the banks technically borrow from to give you the 5-year fixed, right, dropped. And this is the spread I was talking about before. They haven't given back that spread. They're technically making more money giving you that 5-year mortgage right now. But at the current moment, you can see how much it moved from one person's announcement, right? So keep that in mind. New inputs make new outputs. It may sound like I'm very repetitive, but this I have to keep telling you a lot of people why If you just focus on this and you say, hey, Zen said rate cuts by 75 basis points in the summer of 2024, things can change. And this is to show you that things are changing constantly. And these are some tools that I use to monitor it. And if you want these tools, just shoot me an email, right? Now, this is the 5-year Canada bond, which is a 5-year fixed rate. It's kind of tied against. You can kind of see we're back down here already. We kind of went through the really, really high cycles, right? So right now, we're about where we were in spring 2023 when the market was really, really hot. The only difference, again, at that point is the banks gave back that spread. So their margins were smaller because they were competitive. But this time, they haven't. Are they going to do that in the spring? There's a good chance, right? The probability of that is high. So when we look at the current mortgage rates right now, you can see that the insured, meaning sub 20%, you're at 5.24. I know there's a lot of stuff going around out there with like 4.99, right? So it's out there. We have the uninsured, which is over 20%, right? So we have 5.64. I just had a client get lower than that. They're sub 5.4 right now. So this is kind of what's posted. I think rates are going to be slowly chopped down, but you just kind of have to negotiate that, right? So again, rates are coming down. But the question is, why are rates coming down? A lot of people are going to look at this as, hey, a real estate market is going to bounce back. But one of the other signals about rates and the bond coming down is that we could be heading into a recession. This is the big thing. Are we going to get a hard landing or a soft landing? This is why we need to look at employment, right? So pulling from this, you can see, look, CBC is eliminating 600 jobs. You got TD eliminating 3% of their jobs. PwC, 2% of their jobs. Canadian Tire, 3% of their jobs. Scotia cutting 3%. RBC cutting 1 to 2%. That's a lot of job layoffs. And this is kind of why I'm saying, if we have some kind of recession, like not a technical recession, right? Because I think they revised it, so we're not in one. We may be in one right now, right? But it's always backwards looking. But if we get a recession in a sense that there's job losses for people will mean they're not buying anything. You're not buying one of your biggest purchases in your lifetime if you know your job isn't secure. So that may put a damper on the demand side, right? Now, on the flip side, if you have a fairly protected job and you know that, it's very hard to hire, say, call it like a developer, you may feel secure and then you may go buy something. And this is kind of why I think with this recession, if we're going to get one, call it a soft landing. Some people may lose their jobs, maybe they're out of the real estate market, but some people will probably be okay. And that's kind of what we're going to see, that K-shaped recovery, similar to what we saw during the pandemic between the service workers and the white collar workers, right? So I can see this happening again with the type of jobs that are being cut. Now, if we look at the affordability due to the rates, if they start cutting, right, this is what it looks like as a Canadian whole thing, right? So this is based on about $700,000 purchase. So if you want to slide that to, say, GTA, you're about 1.1 mil. So it's a little bit higher. But if you look at how the rate cuts are going to happen, assuming prices don't move, they stay the same, okay? A 100 basis point rate cut, bringing it down to 4.5% mortgage rate, give or take, will bring our affordability from up here to down here, which is $3,000 a month, Canada-wide. If we do 200 basis point rate cut, 3.5, it's going to bring us down to about 2,700. And the reason why I said, yes, rate cuts are going to move the market for the end users to come back in, but not necessarily investors, is because of this reason. If you look in 2020 to 2021, when the rates were super low at like 1.5, right? We're talking like mortgage rates. It's much more affordable. The rents could cover it, right? But because the rates are still elevated and the prices didn't really drop much, as I said in my last video, why despite crazy inventory coming and rates being so high, why the prices not really drop? Because of that reason, investors aren't buying for anything less for cheap unless, they find some distressed deal below average price, right? So that means that they're not going to jump in the market because their costs are not covered by the rents because they're still so elevated despite the rate cut. So yes, we may see a price increase, but I really think that the investors aren't going to be jumping back so that the demand side isn't flooding in like crazy. It really is going to be the end users who are going to be pushing the market, and we're going to be seeing a lot of the good product that are basically turnkey, like you can move in, right? It's going to move, but a lot of the crap is not going to move. Now, number 4, sales. This one's fairly easy. Like if you look over here, we're projected to end 2023 with 65,000 sales, which is basically like I think a decade and a half, low. I really think we'll probably get like a 10% increase, mainly because again, some of the buyers are moving from the sidelines back into the market, but I still think the investors are a little bit scarred right now. And unless rates come down or rental rates go really, really high, I think some investors are going to stay out of the market for the time being, or they're basically just kind of like still on the defense or rejigging their portfolio from some of the high interest rates that just happened in the last 2 years. That's why, again, I think sales are going to increase, but they're increasing from a 15-year low. So it's not like it'd be that great. And you can see in 2021, super, super high, right? So I still think we'll be below the 10-year average, even though prices may move up a tiny little bit, right? Now, one of the other reasons why I also think that is if we look at 2023 as a whole, right, we had that huge run up, a really, really strong spring, percentage wise from an acceleration, one of the strongest springs we had this year because the rates plummeted, right? Because of the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. What I pulled out here is that I took March to June, the number of sales, which is essentially the spring market, and as a percentage, how much of that is relative to the year. And you can basically see here, we basically hover around 40 to maybe over 45%, right? Outside of some crazy years like, the pandemic in 2017. So you can basically see here that without the spring market in 2023 would have been even lower in sales. So if we account for the increase in sales, if rates come down to the 4.5, which again, some people are saying it will, we may see that bump up. And when you kind of scale that back and having it not 50% of the sales and call it even up through the year, this is why I'm getting a 10% increase in sales, what I'm expecting, right? It's not going to be crazy. It's just going to be moving, but not at a glacier pace like we are right now because we're almost kind of frozen. Now, number 5, this is what I'm called the bifurcation of asset types, right? In layman's term, I think there's going to be a divergence in the type of assets. And I'm going to separate it into turnkey properties versus not turnkey. But within that turnkey properties, I really, really think that the freehold homes, okay, with a 3-bedroom, maybe even condo towns of 3 bedrooms, are going to outperform the entire market, especially the condos. And you can see over here, I pulled data essentially from September 2023 to November 2023, which is essentially the very, very slow months, right? So within that, I kind of saw how quickly stuff was moving from a boots on the ground data, but I wanted to kind of illustrate that to you in a larger macro data. So you can see here, I highlighted in the red box, maybe a little bit small, I'll try to zoom in later, but you can see that it had a sales to list price of 98.4%, which again, doesn't seem that bad, honestly, but when you look into each individual condo, some of them are going for 90%. And that's because there's stress at the investor level on condos. And that's kind of why I think, unless you have a very ready to go turnkey condo, I don't think you'll have a lot of buyers ready for it because the first time home buyers who generally buy the condos aren't quite fully back in the market yet. It may change next year, but if you have a good layout, good unit, good view, it will sell. But if you have a crappy investor unit that doesn't do very well, I think it's going to have a hard time selling, especially if it's tenanted. Whereas if you look at the highlighted yellow parts, the semi-detached and the town homes in the last 2 months, right? Remember, these were the lowest months of sales in 20 years, right? 2 decades. You can see that semis still went over ask on average, 102% give or take. And then the towns went for 101%. And I see a lot of this right now because I really think that the millennial cohort, right, they're starting to form families, they're starting to have kids, they're getting married, and they want to go into that 3-bedroom kind of picket fence, have a backyard kind of lifestyle, and don't want to raise their kids in an apartment. So we're seeing a lot of movement in that space. Also, keep in mind, we're building significantly more condos than we are freehold homes. So that's why there's a shortage of these specific freehold homes that are ready to go turnkey. So I think that asset type is going to be fairly hot in 2024 and it's going to be in quite a demand. So for anyone who's kind of looking to move up from a condo to a house, I think it's going to be challenging because the condos are coming down in price. They're not in much demand, whereas the freehold property is in demand. Now, if you're moving from, say, the townhome to a larger detached, that actually be advantageous for you because the asset you're selling is in very high demand and detaches right now, you can still see here, they're still below 100%. So that middle section, that entry-level 3-bedroom is really hot right now. And you can kind of see this in this chart over here, right? So you can see single and semi-detached. Look, I was talking about semi in town, but close enough in this chart. You can see that the orange line is relative to the population growth that you can see. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. We kind of were building just enough of these singles and semis for the amount of population we have. But look, boom, boom. And then we reduced the amount of homes being built because obviously the rates were high. So this is why there's going to be a huge funnel into the freehold homes, entry-level stuff, whereas the population doesn't look like it's slowing down. And if we look at here, where they survey the type of buyers there are, it says that the millennial home purchasers are making up more and more of the buyers, right? So you can see in 2018, it was about 44%. Now we're over 50%. And I think we'll continue seeing more and more of this because of that reason where millennials are one of the biggest demographics right now, only after the baby boomers, and they're all basically buying properties right now. Keep in mind, The baby boomers, if you're like an older baby boomer, there's a big wealth transfer that's happening to the millennial kids so that, look, maybe they're not making the most money, but the assets the baby boomers have can be transferred in the form of cash gifts to the millennials to help them buy a home. And that's why I think these freehold homes are going to be like bumping in 2024. And here's from StatsCan, you can basically see the biggest working cohort is the millennials, right? So they're working, they have good incomes, and if they're missing that down payment, it can be gifted from the baby boomers. And here's just kind of like some other things I'm seeing, boots on the ground data. I just have to blur some of this out. This is all within like the last month. These are all freehold properties that have 3 bedrooms or more between the 800,000 price point to 1.2. So you can see these guys were not positioned for multiple offers. They got 2 offers in December, right? These guys were not positioned for multiple offers. They got 4. This was also in December. It's just wild. Now, some properties were positioned for multiple offers. And I will say, if you have a basement rental, separate entrance and kitchen, that stuff is moving even faster and it's in higher demand. So you can see they were expecting offers. They got 3. This is also in December. These guys were expecting offers. They got 6. This was in end of November. So call it like early December. And then these guys also, they got 10. Wow, 10. And then these guys were in also end of November. They got 6 offers. They were expecting multiple. And these are all freehold entry homes that have 3 bedroom or more. And I would say, without disclosing too much, the ones that got more than 5 offers did have a separate entrance. So that's the type of market we're already seeing right now at the end of December. Imagine what's going to happen in New Year if the rates cuts happen, right? And you can see, this is the data I'm seeing. This is why I really think there's a bifurcation of the asset types in 2024. So if you're planning to make a move, plan accordingly, right? I'll repeat myself as a summary. Going condo to entry-level townhome, you're going to struggle selling that townhome and buying that property. Make sure you sell the condo first. Do the hardest thing first. Now, if you're moving from entry freehold home to a detached, again, depending on where, I would still say sell first. But if you're in a very hot market where your property is basically like the prettiest girl in the party, everyone's going to come after you, right? So you may be able to buy first and find a good deal, and they can sell fairly quickly depending on what the market looks like. As a summary, keep that in mind if you're moving up the real estate ladder. The next thing is the rental market is going to be sluggish, which is normal, okay? But it's going to go bonkers in the summer. This is all kind of like the seasonal trend. And you can kind of see every single year when you kind of zoom out right here, there's a seasonal drop right now, Nobody really moves in November, December, January. Really no one does, except for if you're trying to find a rental by like a university that has that kind of like filling process in the winter months for the summer rents, right? But that's just a trend localized to each university or college. But in general, in Toronto, yeah, generally just comes down. But what you can see, it usually bumps up in the summertime, right? So I would say it starts from April, May, June, it goes bumping. Now, what you'll see here is that this is the year-over-year change based on the month or the quarter. And you basically see here a high point of June, 18% year-over-year increase, which is but wild. It's insane. If you see here, this is 4% increase. Keep in mind, 4% looks like nothing, but similar to how you read inflation, it doesn't mean prices are coming down. It just means prices are going up slower, right? So rents have generally been going up throughout the year. It's just they don't feel like they're going up right now because of the winter months. But I really do think that because of the stupid population boom we have, and yeah, I'm using the word stupid, I think it's just way too much, we're going to probably see a huge surge of rental demand probably in the summer like we normally do. The question is, how bad is it going to be based on the population numbers? So looking at populations, I think in June 16, as a nation, we reached 40 million people, which is a lot. It's a lot because we're increasing our population by like 1.3 to 1.5%, right? But if you look here, this is just for Ontario. You can basically see going from Q2 2023 to Q3 2023, we increased the population by 151,000 in the province, which is 1% increase in the population in one quarter. When annualized, that's 4% increase in population in 1 year. It's just like stupid. It really is stupid because, again, like when people come to Canada, let's just say, hey, they're forced to go to a different province. Everyone migrates to Ontario because that's where the opportunity is. And that's just unfortunately how it is, right? So when I look at some charts that I pulled, this is the number of housing completions relative to the population boom in Ontario. The average completions is this orange line over here. And you can kind of see we have spikes up and down. And the reason why I use completions is starts don't mean anything because like sometimes a property can take 2 years to build. Sometimes it can take 7 years to build, like a condo, right? So it's just a number of properties ready for people to move into. And this is the amount we have. And you can kind of see like we're hovering a little bit higher from kind of like the builds in 2017 and 2018 when we did have that boom. And they're finishing right now, right? But like in 2022, we're slowing down because of the pandemic. Now, when I map that to the population boom, which is what I find very interesting, right? You can see here, essentially, going all the way back to 2003, for every single person that was coming in here, we had 4 people per home that we finished. Now we are at 7 people per home that we finished. Yeah, that's a problem. Yep, you see why the rental market's going to increase like crazy? And the reason why I didn't say this doesn't trickle into the resale market where prices are going to go up is because, a lot of our immigration is like non-permanent residents, right? And I think it's slowly becoming more and more mainstream to talk about. These non-permanent residents aren't buying homes right now, even though they may have an exemption for like the foreign tax. But what they do is they basically rent. And that's why I think it's going to drive the rental market like crazy, especially if a lot of the foreign people coming in or non-permanents or students, they're going to be kind of like bidding up these 1-bedroom condos if they're wealthy, or if they're not, then they're going to be sharing a bedroom or renting a 1-bedroom in like a larger home, right? Kind of like a student res. And that's kind of why I think we're going to have a lot of stress on the rental markets, because we have 7 people coming in for 1 completion. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, when we look at the population growth relative to housing starts, we're like future forecasting our problems right now. You can basically see we got 1.9 million people. Yeah, doesn't seem right. 666 starts. Yeah, you can see there's a 3x problem. So when we go back here, we have 1 home for every 7 people right now because we're underbuilding and we have way too many people. But in the future, maybe we'll help that problem out by going from 7 to 1 to 3 to 1, which means we still have a housing shortage. And the reason why I didn't say this is going to trickle into the resale is, look, a lot of this population growth is non-permanent residents. Yes, some of them may become PRs and permanent residents, but some of them may leave, right? Depending on what opportunities are in Canada. And yes, I know I see all this stuff about Canada deteriorating, blah, 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 whatever, right? But if there is opportunity for that person, they'll probably stay and become a PR. But at the moment right now, for those who are not PRs, they're not going to be buying a home, which is why I'm saying they're not going to trickle into the resale. So this is why non-permanent residents are going into the rental market, because it's very temporary, it's transitional. Yes, they may stay there longer and maybe they're trying to get the PR before they move into the resale market, but when they land here, they're not buying a home right away. They're generally renting. So that's kind of why I think the rental market is going to have a lot of problems, and it's going to be a lot of stress on it, because look, even though we're having probably another record year of completions, can that get absorbed by all of this population growth? And the answer is yes, because we had more completions last year and I thought we weren't going to absorb it, but we absorbed it just like that. So we already have past precedent of all this inventory being absorbed, which is just nuts. And the final prediction we got here is open bids are going to be stupid. They're just going to give sellers way more power, even though the intention was to provide transparency to the buyers. Look, I get a lot of buyers on the other side are really pissed off. We also have clients that don't like how kind of closed off the offer process is. But by us implementing this new thing called TRESA, which is Trust in Real Estate Services Act, right? It just gave the sellers more power. And let me show you. This is the form that the sellers are choosing to disclose whatever they want, whenever they want, right? So I'll give you an example. If I am a seller and I receive 2 offers, one of them being $100,000 higher than the other, why on earth would I disclose to them if I have the option and my choice, right, to the other second person that, hey, this guy ahead of you is by $100,000. Can you come up with that? Very unlikely they're going to be able to come up with $100,000, right? So they choose not to disclose. But on the other hand, let's say 2 offers are very, very close and say they're off by $5,000. I'll be like, oh, hey, they're so close. Let's just let them duke it out. And they can do multiple rounds of this, right? And the problem with all of this is it's all up to the seller and their discretion. There is no kind of like a systematized way, because the way that TRESA is set up is that the sellers can choose to disclose if they want to, not because they have to. That's the biggest difference, right? And again, you can do this with price, deposit, closing. It's whatever you want, right? So this is why I'm saying this is going to give sellers way more power. Now, at the moment right now, because, it's not really a seller's market, like no one's opening bids or anything outside of like maybe a couple like, really good freehold homes. I haven't seen the game theory of this play out, and maybe not a lot of people have worked on this yet. I really think that the kinks are going to get ironed out over some time. And I think maybe technology will come in for like, auctions, or maybe like different ways of being transparent that, maybe a little bit more fair to the buyers. But at the moment right now, unless those things are implemented, can the sellers abuse their newfound power with the TRESA open bids? Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of people, I think at the end of these open bids would be like, oh, hey, how come the seller didn't reveal the bids? Maybe it was that, did I overpay by way too much? Or if they did open it, they'd be like, oh, hey, they're making us duke it out. That means they're really close. So like, it's just this weird game theory and this like emotional thing that because it hasn't been ironed out, there's no like, call it standardized way of doing it. Like even that we have right now with like the blind bidding, it's going to be a weird year where the sellers have way too much power. Now, if you aren't buying property or working with our team, what's wrong with you? Joking aside, but like, if you are buying something, make sure your agent, if you're not working with us, has this language that I'm putting on the screen to protect you. So this language is basically saying that, hey, look, if the sellers choose to disclose any part of our offer is automatically null and void. And how this basically works is because for them to disclose, they have to send you this form right now, right? So if they send you this form, it makes your offer null and void, so you're not participating in this open bid, so you're not being used or taken advantage of. So this is kind of why I'm saying the game theory hasn't really been set up right now, but on the off chance like weird things do happen, which I do expect because it's a new system that's coming in, make sure you have this in your purchase agreement on the buy side so that if the seller chooses to disclose, like you're not at a disadvantage in some way. At least this gives you a little bit of like wiggle room for leverage, right? And that's a wrap. That is my 7 predictions for 2024. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you are looking to make a move in the real estate market in 2024 and you kind of want to apply some of these new inputs I have just provided to you for what kind of output you want at the tail end for your end result and kind of whether you're buying a home, investing, or selling a home, you can book a call with me using the link right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. And I will see you in the new year. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya! Now that I'm done watching this video, I think you should check out this video. And you know what? Why don't you check out this video too?